Councillors, we might make a start. Welcome to the council meeting of Wyndham City Council this Tuesday, 22nd of February 2022. In the spirit of reconciliation, before beginning this meeting, I acknowledge the peoples of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which Wyndham is being built, and we pay our respects to their elders both past, present and emerging. Could you please stand for the opening prayer and welcome? We pray for guidance in the council's decision making to achieve the best outcome for the people of Wyndham. Please be seated. I would like to welcome members of the gallery, press, councillors and staff in attendance here this evening. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the internet. The recording will be archived and made available on council's website. Whilst all care has been taken to ensure that your privacy is maintained, please be aware that your presence may be recorded. Item 2 is apologies and requests for leave. Mr CEO, do we have any apologies or requests for leave?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No, we have no apologies for this evening's meeting.
Thank you. Item 3 is a declaration by councillors of disclosure of conflict of interest, conflicting personal interest in any item of the agenda tonight. Councillors, does anyone have a conflict of interest they wish to declare? Councillor Ramesh.
Mr Mayor, I have a general conflict of interest on item 6.5.3.
Thank you.
I have a conflict of interest on 6.5.2, the community grants, as I am involved with the Diwali Festival and my sister lives at Bapcare Wyndham Lodge.
The agenda's been updated, Councillor Marcus, but we do take your conflict as changed to 6.5.3. And I'm also declaring a conflict in 6.5.3 as well. I beg your pardon, Councillor Barrera.
I also have a conflict of interest in 6.5.3.
Okay, thank you. My apologies.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, I've got
another one.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, of course.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a general conflict on 6.5.3. I'm on the General Committee for Christmas at the Lake, so I wanted to be absent for that element, but if I could be present for the rest. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McIntyre. Where are we up to? Yes. Councillors, item 4 on the agenda is confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. The motion is that the minutes of the council meeting held at 6:15 p.m. and 7 p.m. on Tuesday, 21st December 2021, as prepared and circulated, be confirmed. Councillors, do I have a mover, please? Councillor Ramesh. Seconder, Councillor Hegadich. Any discussion, councillors? No discussion, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Councillors, item 5 on the agenda is deputations and presentations, and it saddens me to have to read this, but just on behalf of Wyndham City Council and the recent passing of Mr Van Morst, I'd just like to read something out. It was a letter that was sent to his partner. I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the recent passing of a stalwart of this community, Harry Van Morst. From leading the fight against a toxic dump in Wyndham in 1998 to his work with the Western Region Environment Centre, Harry was known as a passionate advocate for his local community. I had the pleasure of working with Harry on many projects over the years, as did a number of councillors, including as members of the West Road RDF and Waste Management Community Reference Group. I learned from these interactions that he was incredibly knowledgeable and steadfast in his dedication to the environment. Wyndham is a better place because of the tireless work undertaken by Harry. He will be sadly missed but fondly remembered for generations to come, and our condolences go out to his family at this time. Councillors, item 6 on the agenda is report. 6.1.1 is petitions.
Mr Mayor, I want to put forward an alternate to item 6.1.1 in response to the petition on the proposed footpath on Montpellier Drive, Werribee.
Thank you,
I will
Councillor
second
Shaw.
that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. If I can just read out the first part and then I'll
Of course you can.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I knew that. So the item is response to petition, proposed footpath on Montpellier Drive, Werribee. The report commences on page 9 to 12, recommendations on page 8, attachments page 13 to 17. Councillor Shaw, as you've indicated, you're moving an amendment.
Yeah, I am.
Marcus has seconded.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Marcus. So the alternate recommendation is point 1. The council does not support the construction of a footpath on the west side of Montpellier Drive, Werribee. Point 2, the council supports the following improvements: a pram crossing at the Montpellier Drive, Wattle Avenue intersection, a pram crossing at near the Montpellier Drive, Nicole Court intersection, a pram crossing at near the Montpellier Drive, Patricia Close intersection, a pram crossing at the Montpellier Drive, Edwards Road intersection. Thank you, Mr Mayor, that's it.
Okay, so you've got a second, or you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I will just say a few words. I think it's just important to recognise that we did have 69 residents that put in a petition to this footpath. I am a supporter of our active transport strategy and our footpath network and the work that we are trying to do here to connect our city appropriately, but a second footpath was not warranted at Montpellier Drive in Werribee. It is actually well connected with Wattle Avenue and Edwards Road as well. I do think the improvements to some of the crossings are actually really important. I'd actually like to see them at some other places as well around our city, but I do think to make it safer, we do have a lot of families, kids, prams, etc. in the area, so to ensure that they can cross in a safe way, I think is actually really important. But ultimately, in the end, 69 residents who put in the petition, I'd probably still say most of those now don't want the footpath. I understand that. And I think we should, I hope my councillor colleagues will support me and Councillor Marcus and Councillor Peter Maynard as the ward councillors on this evening. I know it's caused a great deal of stress to some of the residents in that area, and hopefully you'll support the notice, or the alternate, I should say, tonight, just to do the improvements and not the construction of the footpath. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Marcus, as a second, do you wish to speak?
Thank you very much. I have consulted with Councillor Shaw. I've been around there to see that beautiful street today. It's certainly not warranted. I think it is time that we listen more closely to our residents. If they don't want a second footpath, we need to respect their wishes. We need to respect the passion that they have here in our city. And I think the amendment that we are putting up tonight should address the issues that Councillor Shaw has got in this amendment. That part of Werribee is a very beautiful part. It's a quiet part, and when I looked at it today, the number of trees that we would have had to have taken out, we're all for tree canopy, and it would have been a shame to see the beautiful trees that would have to have been removed. So I think if councillors, please vote for this tonight, and we need to listen more to our council officers, and I think I'll probably be speaking with the council officers. If the residents have good reasons why they don't want a second footpath in their street, I think we should adhere to that, because we've caused so many residents with stress over trying to force footpaths on them. I think we have to look at it and change the way we're thinking. Yes, I agree we want active travel, but we need to respect the wishes of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Councillors, are there any speakers against the alternate? Any further speakers for it? Being no further speakers, I put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The alternate is carried. Thank you. Item 6.2, strategic reports. 6.2.1, Wyndham Dog Off-Leash Plan. The report's on page 18 and 19, the recommendations are on page 19, and the attachments page 13 to 17. Councillors, can I have a mover, please? Councillor, Zatkowski. Happy to second. Councillor Marcus. Councillor Zatkowski.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If there's one thing that this pandemic has emphasised, it's the importance of open space. They provide us with the opportunity to connect with nature, socialise, retreat and reflect. The Dog Off-Leash plan demonstrates our ability to balance these activities while still meeting the needs of our community. We know that the Dog Off-Leash spaces are a valued asset within Wyndham, made evident through the high level of engagement our community has shown throughout the development of this plan. Over 5,000 community members participated in the first round of engagement and a further 1,000 through the formal public exhibition period. And for anyone who knows about public engagement and this council, that is a staggering number. The feedback received was central to the development of the Dog Off-Leash plan, and I thank all who participated. The Dog Off-Leash plan will deliver the provision, development and management of dog-friendly spaces, but more importantly, public education on the use of these facilities. The focus being the safety of dog owners and responsible dog ownership. This holistic approach will enable a balanced use of our precious open spaces and create great outcomes for our community. Over the next 5 years, this plan will provide equitable access to off-leash spaces across our city through the delivery of 11 new dog off-leash parks and upgrades of 2 existing parks. I look forward to visiting these new facilities with my own dog and continue to connect with our community. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Zatkowski. Councillor Marcus, being the second, do you wish to speak?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I'm really pleased to see this report, and I thank the council officers for the hard work that they put into it. This was part of my portfolio for the last 4 years, and I wanted all dogs registered in this city, and I think we did a really good job. And it's now great to see. But I'm quite surprised that we've only got 21,000 registered dogs in this city. I would have thought we'd have a lot more. And that's 21,000 with a residence household of 16,702. Safety of both dogs and their owners and the users of our open spaces is vitally important. And in addition to needing not only more dog-friendly spaces across our city, we need diversity in the experience available to dogs and their owners. And this has been highlighted by our community throughout the development of this plan. In particular, the community provided feedback to the Werribee Foreshore required additional dog-friendly area. And this is quite a difficult area. I'm down there nearly every weekend. I see the people, and mostly I see they're very good, they work in their dogs, but sometimes the dogs get up, and we've had 2 dog attacks down there just recently. So we need to look at where we're going to, and we need a lot more consultation with Werribee South to make sure that we place the dog off lead in the correct place. So the competing demands on our foreshore area continue to increase, and the mixture of off-dog leads and the engagement with the community on the appropriate location and approach for implementation of an additional dog off-leash beach area, as I said before. I also acknowledge the 100,000 Ks being recorded towards future delivery in the 23-24 to assist with our long-term financial plan. And I really would like to thank all of our residents that have participated in the development of this plan. And I love looking out the window with the dogs off lead on Wyndham football ground. So I don't think they're supposed to be there, but by God, there's a lot there, Mr. CEO, and the dogs love it. So that they do appreciate a good place to run where they can chase the balls and the people. So it's I often go over there with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Councillor, are there any speakers against this motion? Any further speakers for it? Councillor Ramesh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Dog Off-Leash plan is a great example of how Council is committed to working in partnership with our community in the enhancement of open spaces. As Councillor Zatkowski has commented, on the back of pandemic, our community's appreciation of quality open spaces is larger than ever, and a strategic approach on how we enhance these spaces with dog off-lead areas is now so important. The plan provides clear guidance to developers and our internal teams, giving them the confidence to develop dog-friendly spaces as part of future urban landscapes. I note this plan is a Wyndham first and shows we are ready to provide best practice open space networks for our city. I'm pleased to see that the community's feedback has been included in the plan, especially the need for additional dog parks in Point Cook, Williams Landing, and Truganina. I want to thank the community for their high level of engagement, and I look forward to visiting these new facilities once they're delivered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ramesh. Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting as well the dog off-leash plan tonight. The outcomes for Harrison Ward with the Williams Landing dog off-leash park, which will have the design 2021-22, delivery 22-23. Thank you for all of those who participated in that petition. Truganina South East Dog Off-Leash Park developed as part of the overall master plan, delivery by the end of 22-23. The new and additional site, as Councillor Ramesh did comment, for another dog off-lead park in Point Cook, which was very clearly highlighted on the high level of community engagement, with an appropriate location, design and delivery to be 2022-23. Also, the upgrade for the saltwater reserve, which is currently at a local level and will be upgraded to a district level. This will include doubling the size and also including a quiet and active zone, which goes back to, I believe, Councillor Marcus's comments about that sort of safety of an area and safety of owners, so that you wouldn't have all the large dogs and small dogs together. So I really wanted to do that. Big thank you to all the residents that responded, especially those from Point Cook that said very clearly that just an expanded site at Saltwater wasn't enough. And I wanted to thank officers as well for listening to those residents' responses and proposing that additional badly needed site. And I'm also looking forward to more dog-friendly spaces, not just necessarily dog off-lead areas. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McIntyre. Any further councillors to speak against this motion? Any further speakers for it? Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also supportive of this very important dog off-leash plan tonight. I'm not going to repeat some of the comment that my councillor colleague has commented. I just want to mention that I would like to acknowledge the Williams Landing Dog Group, who submitted a petition signed by over 300 individuals and took the time to directly meet with officers to provide their feedback. I look forward to visiting the new Williams Landing Dog Off-Leash Park in the near future. Thank you.
Councillor Hill. Any councillors? Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think council officers have done a great job on this, and I think it's important to have a plan in place, and I can see how we've done that over year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, so I think that's excellent. However, I do want to make a few comments in relation to the fact that most of these are unfunded currently, so we don't have any money in the budget yet for any of these dog parks except the ones in the report that are funded, so Bourbon Road and the one that is being funded by a developer in Manor Lakes. The rest are currently unfunded, and we'll need to be looking at how we do prioritise this type of investment, which I do believe is important in our community. It is a big investment in pets. I think it's important to highlight, on top of the work that we've been doing in relation to the acquisition of the pound that we've got there now in Point Cook, which is fantastic. But in my opinion, I think some of the issues that we're seeing around people wanting more dog off-leash areas is the lack of backyard space that we are starting to see across our municipality with small blocks. And I think it's something that we as a council need to be working harder with developers, and we need to be trying to see how we can actually, if we can, around our planning scheme and other things that we want to do to ensure that people have the space that they need in their own homes and the land that they own, because this is the type of pressure that starts putting on for us as a council financially to find these spaces and build them, because people are generally in lots of new areas are having smaller blocks, and we're going to see more of this over time as well. So a great initiative, one I look forward to discussing more over the next couple of years in terms of the ones we fund and we don't, but the reality is there's a few of these that probably won't get funded this financial year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, any further discussion? Being no further discussion, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. 6.3 Policy and Advocacy, there is nil. 6.4 Strategic and TAM Planning, there is nil. 6.5 Other Reports. 6.5.1 Financial Management Report for Quarter 2 2021-2022. The report commences on page 60 to 64, or is on 60 to 64, recommendation page 61, attachments page 65 to 78. Councillors, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Hegadich. Seconder, Councillor Ramesh. Councillor Hegadich. Councillor Ramesh.
Just to note that my appreciation goes out to the Council for steady financial performance in the first half of the financial year. I will be endorsing this report. Thank you.
Councillor Ramesh. Any speakers against this motion? Any further speakers for it? Being no further speakers, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. 6.5.2 Quarterly Community Report, Quarter 2, 2021-2022. Report was on pages 79, 83, recommendations on page 80, attachments 84 to 137. Councillors, can I have a Councillor Barrera? Seconder, please. Councillor Hegadich. Councillor Barrera.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, really, I just want to congratulate council officers on the work that's been done during this period that this Quarter 2 report covers. Work done under challenging circumstances and done from home, done working remotely. I think COVID-19 has shown us what organisations can accomplish. Jobs that we never imagined could be performed remotely, successfully done from home. Council services have been delivered in adapted but successful ways. And some of the highlights from this report are Council's advocacy strategy, Invest in Opportunity, a critical and a timely document outlining Council's key projects and initiatives that will require state and federal government support. Council also adopted several key strategic documents during this Quarter 2 period: the Council Plan, the Municipal Public Health and Wellbeing Plan, the Long-Term Financial Plan, the Road Management and Domestic Animal Management Plans, and the Resilient Wyndham Strategy. All important documents to ensure that we achieve what the community have told us they want to see through the Wyndham 2040 vision, as well as the additional important work that needs to be done to see this community recover and thrive after the impacts of the last 2 years. Council also continued to oversee the rollout of its major capital works program, and it continued its important delivery of essential services, including delivery of essential food to residents, and partnerships to ensure Wyndham's community were supported to access vaccination. I think it's important to recognise that in the face of COVID-19, Council and Council officers came together and positively got things done, creating new and innovative ways of working for success during tough times. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrera. Good dash. Now, Councillor Hegadich, you're okay? Any councillors against? Any councillors for? Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a couple of comments. I concur with Councillor Barrera. This is a great report. It goes to show the work that council officers do and the work that we are doing across our municipality. So it's good to see that come together and acknowledge that as we come into the chamber from time to time. We don't always agree as councillors, and actually I always think that's a good thing. It's good things to have different points of view and to debate, but ultimately in the end, our council officers, the CEO, our executive team and all of our hard-working council officers just get on with getting the job done, and it's terrific to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillors, any speakers against? Any further speakers for? Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mine is actually a bit of both. So first of all, I'd like to say it is great to see the snapshot, and as Councillor Barrera and Councillor Shaw has said, it's not an easy time to be delivering services, and I think, I commend council officers for doing that. However, I would like to say something that I made very clear in the chamber last quarter when we raised this. A clear ask for the community under the council plan under Livable City was the heading Build Neighbourhood and City Pride through beautification, enhanced amenity and continued investment in the public realm. To me, when we say, how are we doing, most people are not looking at a document. They're looking around. They're looking at where they see, where they live, what are they seeing in their environment. And I would say that in relation to how our municipality looks, again, there is very little measures and commentary other than things like on the gateway sites, which is on hold, and the amber, which is reflected here on litter. The commentary in relation to litter was to do with drive-through days, a litter blitz every few months and a clean-up support day. Clearly, I think that is not enough when you go around our city. I know there's more things happening, but they're not stated here, and there's no clear measures. No targets and timelines to me often usually means that things may not be delivered. We must do more. I hear daily of complaints about dumped rubbish, litter, overgrown nature strips, management of vacant blocks, and I see them and report them myself too. People phone me exacerbated about the condition of where they live. And anecdotally, we hear about the media talking about 42% increase across the board of dumped rubbish and litter on SnapSend Solve. We need to do more, and it needs to be measured and delivered. That's not to say I do not think the council is looking at doing more, but it doesn't reflect that in this document, and it isn't clear what we're doing in this document. And I would suggest we're not doing enough in relation to delivering that element. I do appreciate it isn't just about council. I understand it's working collectively with residents, businesses and other key stakeholders and getting the presentation of our municipality improved so we can truly have pride where we live. We need to work together, and we need to start to see some more tangible improvements in the presentation of Wyndham. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McIntyre. Councillors, any further speakers? Councillor Marcus.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the council staff for this report, but I agree with Councillor McIntyre. I get it. They start at 8 o'clock in the morning complaining, and the presentation of our city is not good. The other thing is, when driving around today, I cannot believe how our housing, beautiful houses, are falling into disrepair. And this concerns me, I guess, because of the COVID. Not all people were able to be supported during this 2 years, and I think this might be one of the reasons why there's such a neglect in many of the houses. And I find this really disturbing. I'm prepared now to meet residents every month with a councillor cuppa so that they can come face to face with me now and discuss how they feel. We need to bring our residents on board more. Because we have magnificent residents living in this city, and I want to make sure that they all remain passionate about their area, and so that we can move forward. COVID hopefully is over. We need to reimagine, reinvent ourselves, move on. I don't want to hear the word COVID very much more now, and I don't think other people do. I think they're ignoring it, and they want to get back and live a life. So I think council officers, thank you, well done. But I agree, we certainly need to bring them in. We need to consult with them. We need to listen to them. We've got a very sad state up Princess Highway, and we've got to look into all these things. But because the city is so big, we don't always get out to see everything. So it's impossible for the council officers to see it. So we depend on our residents coming forward with what they see in their neighbourhood. So everybody that's watching, I know it's on Wyndham TV tonight, so all the residents, please make sure that you contact us and tell us what you want us to do going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Councillors, any further discussion on this item? Councillor, Gilligan.
Thank you. I have some concerns in relation to the superficial nature of the commentary around 1160 Sayers Road. Particularly with regard to the pace of the Riverdale Major Town Centre Urban Design Framework. This is a project that is long overdue. It's been delayed by quite some time. This was a conversation that was occurring at the end of the last term of council. and obviously as a piece of work for this year, but has been very slow and minimal information in terms of the progress that UDF is making. To put in context, this is a critical component of the overall 1160 Sayers Road site and provides important confidence to the private sector as well as to our community about the importance of the Sayers Road train station. It is particularly important that we accelerate the work in this space to have an ongoing conversation about why the state government may preference to deliver Davis Road over Sayers Road at significant economic cost to our community. So in terms of the quarterly report that's provided today, in terms of that particular piece of work, it only refers to ministerial sign-off, which in my opinion is relatively straightforward. It has nothing directly to do with us in terms of the fact that that documentation was submitted ages ago for ultimate approval by the Minister. It does not talk to the progress of the UDF, and of which is a fundamental piece of land in addition to the proposed stadium that really does need to be accelerated, in my opinion. Particularly given the enormous importance that this project has for Tarneet and residents out in Wyndham North. That's my feedback on the quarterly report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gillian. Councillors, any further discussion on the matter? Being no further discussion, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Councillor McIntyre. Councillors, we're going to do this in a couple of parts. 6.5.3, Annual Community Grants Program, approval of the large annual community grant round. And as indicated, Councillor McIntyre has declared a conflict on part of this item being the Christmas at the Lakes. So we'll take this item first. So councillors, can I have a mover, please, that the council award the Christmas at the Lakes a large grant of $30,000? Councillor Shaw. Seconder, please. Councillor Mahfood. Councillor Shaw.
I'm pleased to see that they got a good grant for the upcoming Christmas at the Lakes. It's a great event, one that's well supported by community. So it's terrific to see that well supported. So I will be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Mahfood as a seconder. No. Any speakers against? Any further speakers for? No. Councillors, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Councillors, as I have a conflict of interest in the remainder of this item, the Deputy Mayor will be chairing this item. I will leave the chamber and return when requested. Thank you. Councillor McNair.
No.
Point of order. There are other people with conflicts, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, councillors.
Thank you.
It's all under control. Thank you for the heads up. Councillor Marcus has declared a conflict of interest on part of this item, being the Bathcare Wyndham Lodge and the Wyndham Diwali Incorporated. Councillors, we will only vote on these items.
I have two conflicts. Are you going to do both of my conflicts
together?
Okay.
That's right.
So I'm Bathcare
could you please,
and I'm Diwali.
Yep. Could you please? Yep. Leave the room. Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Councillor. Okay, Councillor Lamesh also have a conflict on. Okay, we will vote on.
No, what, sorry. Point of order. What is her conflict?
Councillor Ramesh has declared a conflict of interest on the Wyndham Diwali Incorporated. We'll vote on the two items together. So we'll vote on the Betcare, Wyndham Lodge, and the Wyndham Diwali Incorporated. The recommendation is that the council award large grants to the Betcare Wyndham Lodge $44,000 and the Wyndham Diwali of $29,150. Councillors, do I have a mover of this item? Councillor Mahfood. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hegedish. Councillor Mahfood, would you like to speak to the motion as mover, please?
Just so we can just keep things moving, I'll speak later when we do the bulk of them. But no,
Yep.
thank you.
You would like to research your
I won't speak now, thank you.
Okay, that's all right, yep. So, Councillor Hegedish, would you like to speak to the motion as a seconder?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hegedish. So, councillors, do we have any more speakers for this motion? Do we have anyone who would like to speak against the motion? Okay, since we don't have any further speakers, we'll move on to the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. The motion is carried. The next item, Councillor Barrera has declared a conflict of interest on the Betcare, on the remainder. Okay, yep. Which item is this? Okay, so we'll wait for the councillors to come back. Could we get Councillor Ramesh back to the seat, please? Okay, so we now have Councillor Marcus back, and Councillor Ramesh is declared conflict of interest of the whole lot of the rest of the items. So, councillors, we will now proceed to continue the remaining items.
So you're telling me that the other I don't even know which councillor you referred to, actually. Councillor Ramesh, so she's got a conflict on all of them?
She can choose to remain as a general, not participating in the rest of the...
Is she declaring a conflict on the rest of them? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, she is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilligan. Councillors, we'll now move on to continue the remaining items of 6.5.3. The report is on pages 138 to 145.
Point of order. I don't believe Councillor Barrera has a conflict over all the items. I believe she's only got one conflict, and I would like that clarified, but I believe she usually will only have one conflict. I believe she's here for the rest of the items.
She does only have one conflict of interest.
Asian Centre. Make that clear.
We'll confirm that whether she would like to stay for the meeting. Yep.
So, just to be clear, Councillor Ramesh has declared a conflict on every applicant on this agenda.
Except the lakes, by the sounds of things.
Oh, I'm so
Christmas at the lakes.
How can a councillor have a conflict on every one of those applications?
So, sorry, through you, Madam Chair, we're just seeking confirmation from Councillor Barrera with regard to the specific nature of the conflict, if it's only related to one. Councillor Maynard declared a conflict on all the items. Councillor Ramesh has declared an item. Okay, so councillors have confirmed they're both conflicted for all of the items in this report.
Thank you,
all
Mr.
three of
CEO.
them.
Thank you, Mr. CEO.
That's the advice we've got, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Councillors, now we will continue with the remaining items of 6.5.3 reports on pages 138 to 145, recommendations on pages 139, and attachments on pages 146 to 148. The recommendation is that Council award the large grants for 2021-2022 to the remaining recipients. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item?
So moved.
Councillor Hegedish. Do I have a seconder for this item? Councillor Mahfood. Councillor Hegedish, as a mover, would you like to speak to the motion at this
I'll
time?
reserve my right, thank you.
No worries, thank you. Councillor Mahfood, as a seconder, would you like to speak to this motion?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. This is a long drawn-out process that councillors and council officers went through to award these grants to these organisations. There was a large sum of money, but never enough to go around. So we had that task. Well, first the officers had the task of shortlisting the recipients, and then councillors sat. There was a number of councillors, I believe there were 6 of us that sat down and went through the organisations with a pool of about $700,000. We had to be diligent with where the ratepayers' money's been spent. But I think all these organisations here are worthy. I've got a few notable ones that I've put out. There's many of them there that are all worthy, of course, of the money. But some of my favourites here: Wyndham Park Community Centre, which is the Wyndham Park Men's Shed incorporated into that, has received money for $40,000 for Wyndham Tool Library. I think that's a very worthwhile, recipient of that money, where residents will then be able to, instead of having to go off and buy a tool just for one odd job they may have, they can go borrow this tool. Similar to our book library, similar to the toy library, they will now host our first tool library. I think it's a fantastic goal, and I think that's like I said, a very recipient of the organisation for that money. The Baptist Wyndham Lodge, that was mentioned earlier. I know that was mentioned earlier. I said I'll wait and speak about that. Another one that
Point of order, Madam Chair. That's a conflict for me.
I can't even speak on. Okay, I won't mention that one. Okay, should have mentioned it earlier. Okay, thank you. There's a lot there. I can't go through them all. Wyndham River Association, $32,000 for an education engagement programs for sustainable living. I won't mention many more in case I do fall into the trap if someone's been conflicted. But I think, like I said, there's a lot of worthwhile organisations here that are receiving the money. I'm glad to endorse this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mahfood. Councillors, do we have any speakers against this motion? Do we have any speakers for the motion? So as we don't have any further speakers, we'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. The motion is carried. I'll now pass the chair to the Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillors, if I might, it just sort of shows that if we're forewarned about councillors having conflicts, we can jig the agenda such that it allows for the movement of different councillors if we know in advance. So that's probably a good thing to just keep in mind. 6.5.4, the naming of the Truganina South East and Tarney North Community Centres. The report is on pages 169 to 172, the recommendations 169. There are nil attachments. Councillors, can I have Councillor Barrera? A seconder, please. Councillor Ramesh. Councillor Barrera.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's fair to say, Mr Mayor, Wyndham has a strong and a proud Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander history dating back thousands of years. First Nations peoples have experienced a long history of exclusion from our history books as well as from our Australian democracy. History of dispossession and colonisation lies at the heart of the disparity between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and other Australians today. It's important that as a council we recognise and acknowledge traditional owners as the first Australians and as the custodians of the land on which Wyndham is being built. And it's important because it demonstrates to our First Nations people that as a council we're aware of the past and the ongoing connection of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to place and to country. Acknowledging traditional owners is also about relationship building. It demonstrates Council's commitment towards sincere reconciliation. It also shows that we understand the connection between traditional owners and the land, and it's a way of allowing First Nations people, quite rightly in my opinion, to be at the table when making decisions about their country, such as the naming of 2 new community centres. Our strategy to seek traditional owner language for these 2 centres is consistent with our naming policy and the state government's draft naming rules, which set out the process and encourages engagement with traditional owners in the naming of roads, features and localities. Council is further committed to use traditional owner language for the naming of new community facilities in the Reconciliation Action Plan. The Bunurong Land Council is the most appropriate organisation for Council to be consulting with in relation to the use of traditional owner language in this part of Wyndham on the east side of the Werribee River. The Bunurong Land Council is the registered Aboriginal party which, through the Victorian Heritage Act, recognises them as the primary guardians, keepers and knowledge holders of Aboriginal cultural heritage. Officers engaged with the Bunurong Land Council in 2021 following their formal RAP status being approved, and the names suggested for the 2 centres were Kumail Tardi Community Centre for the new centre at Truganina South East, Kumail being the grass used for weaving and Tardi meaning sister, and Bembit Bagrook Community Centre for the new centre under construction at Tarneet North, Bembit meaning flower and Bagrook meaning women. A report was presented to Council in November recommending a period of public exhibition as per the naming process. There were no objections received in relation to the 2 names. Some critics of traditional owner language may suggest that names might be difficult to pronounce if they are unfamiliar. However, we have many great Wyndham places and landmarks that already use traditional owner language. These include Werribee, Wangawildarong Centre in Wyndham Vale, which means strong heart in Wadawurrung language, Iramu, grassy plains in Woiwurrung language. The school next to the new community centre in Truganina South East also uses traditional owner language, Garung Willem Primary School, meaning eucalyptus home. Whilst these terms may feel unfamiliar to begin with, they become second nature over time. And as a council, we must undertake to work closely with the community to ensure that the meaning and the pronunciation of the names is shared and understood by all. Recognising and acknowledging traditional owners is a powerful way of showing respect and honouring Aboriginal communities who continue to be the cultural custodians and holders of knowledge for the land on which we live, work and play in Wyndham. I would like to thank the Bunurong Land Council for so generously partnering with us and for sharing their language for the whole of the community to understand, to recognise and to celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrera, and spot on 5 minutes. Councillor Ramesh, being the seconder, do you wish to speak?
Yes, just very briefly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to extend my thanks to the council staff to taking on the feedback of the need to proactively prepare acceptable Aboriginal names in the naming of new facilities and community centres. I'm proud that we are able to reflect on our Aboriginal heritage in the naming of these 2 sites, and I look forward to continued reflection of our diversity of culture and history in future sites and locations across Wyndham. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ramesh. Councillor, are there any further speakers, are there any speakers against this motion? Any further speakers for it? Councillor Marcus, you put your hand up.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Councillor Barrera, but if you will give me the indulgence, I think this is information that possibly nobody around this council chamber would know. I would like to recognise our former councillor, solicitor, Councillor Frank Purcell, who was the first non-Indigenous person to work on the land rights for our Indigenous people. He did it up in Gove in Northern Territory. I've been up there. I saw all the plaques, how they recognised his work. And he took on all of that work many years ago. So I think it's only fair that we acknowledge the work of our former late Councillor Purcell for the work he did for our Indigenous people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Certainly true. Councillors, any further speakers who wish to speak against the motion? Any further speakers for it? There being none, I put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 6.5.5, proposed road discontinuance and committee of management, unused government road Truganina. The report is on page 173, 178, recommendation page 173, 174. Nil attachments. Councillors, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Shaw. Seconder. Councillor Ramesh. Councillor Shaw. Thank you. Councillor Ramesh, no?
No, thank you.
Any speakers against? Speakers for? There being no speakers, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 6.5.6, Wyndham Governance Rules Review. Report page 179 to 183, recommendation page 180, attachments 184 to 219. Councillors, can I have a move? Councillor Zatkowski?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish to move this motion tonight, but with the following amendment. So part 1 will read, note the draft governance rules. Number 2 will read, amends section 13.1 to read, the Mayor, or at least 4 councillors, may by a written notice to the CEO, call a council meeting and authorises community consultation for the draft governance rules for a period of 14 days from 1st of March 2022 to 15 March 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Zatkowski. You do have a seconder. Councillor Ramesh. Councillor Zatkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The review of the governance rules has been taking place since before Christmas. My personal view at its commencement was that a review was a good idea. However, I didn't believe our rules were substantially deficient and did not expect any radical change. I was interested to see a lot of meritorious suggestions put forward by my fellow councillors for consideration. These suggestions were submitted to our legal counsel for opinion. In summary, the advice largely said that either the changes were not possible as a matter of law or that change was at the sole discretion of council. Well, this change that I've proposed is one that is at our discretion. Not being the type of person that is willing to impulsively propose change for change's sake, I conducted my own investigations. The results of my work have been sent to my fellow councillors for review, and I have tabled 2 documents tonight. The data acquired and a chart that illustrates my analysis. I discovered that 79 of the councils in Victoria had our council, of the 79 councils, had one of the lowest percentage requirement for calling a special meeting. We in fact sit in the bottom 16%. Councils range from not allowing any councillors at all to call a special meeting, reserving that right for the mayor or the CEO, to requiring 60% of councillors to call a meeting, well over 50% or a solid majority. 9 councils in total required 50% or more, and 68% of councils sit between 33 and 43% as a ratio. My amendment places council at a ratio of 36%, smack bang in the middle of the majority of councils. And it's my view that this brings us in line with the majority. I also note there has been, I also note that the number of, my apologies. I also note that 3 has been the number of councillors required to call a special meeting as far back as 1997, when Wyndham had just 7 councillors. While this is my informed view, I accept the will of this chamber if this opinion isn't shared, and should it pass, and I hope it does, I will also take into consideration public feedback when the final vote takes place. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Zatkowski. Councillor Ramesh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Special meetings have a very important function and purpose in governance, affording the governance committee, which is us councillors, to be responsive to crises and urgent issues rather than needing to wait for the next monthly meeting to arise. Over the last year, multiple special meetings have been called and everyone has failed to meet the question of urgency. For a truly urgent issue, it would be easy to achieve broad support, if not consensus, on the need to meet and resolve the issue. As such, I believe that raising the threshold from 3 to 4 retains the ability for valid special meetings to be called while acting as an increased threshold to minimize the misuse of power. I thank Councillor Zatkowski for his time in diligently researching this topic and bring that research into our decision making today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ramesh. Councillors, is there any speakers against this motion or this amended motion? Councillor Gilligan.
Before I speak, I do want to use a provision under the governance rule to ask a question on the amendment to the CEO. And my question is it the case that there is legal advice that did not recommend this proposed amendment? And is that legal advice the council's position?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Gilligan. So legal advice was sought on a whole range of issues in the governance rules. The legal advice, I guess, was non-committal with regard to the numbers and suggested that the 3 that are in the current rules are adequate and appropriate, or really up to the discretion of council, and that's where we're sitting today. This is a decision of council.
That's fine. That's enough for an answer for me. Okay, great. I'll now prepared to speak.
Yeah, sure.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. On the point of research, I think I'll probably take a testimony within the anti-corruption inquiry that's currently under the way, where the councillor in question was on the purpose of questions of capability, quote, made error after error after error in one testimony in relation to...
Point order,
if you can actually stick to what you're talking about. I actually think you're going away from what we're actually looking at.
Well, it's a question of the credibility of...
I understand about what you're alluding to.
Yeah, sure. Which, of course, now being, I guess, restricted in what I'm able to say, I think it is important to turn our mind to the actual so-called merits of this proposition. It is not the case that you, Councillor Ramesh, if you understand the difference between an urgent resolution and a special council meeting, and you're not actually required to do one between council meetings. That's called an urgent resolution, so I recommend you get some governance training. A special council meeting can be called for any matter at any time, subject to the perceived urgency of it, but it's not the case that it's required necessarily in between meetings. On the point of whether this proposal has any merit whatsoever, I would point to the 3 meetings that occurred and the merits of those meetings. We had a meeting to deal with an unvaccinated councillor and get appropriate advice on whether that unvaccinated councillor can be stood down. We dealt with the current Mayor of the day engaging in verbal abuse towards a resident, which he later publicly apologised for. And we had a meeting on a vaccination hub, making sure that this community was protected. They were the 3 special council meetings So, Councillor Ramesh, I'm not quite sure how you don't support any of those three particular propositions, and I would encourage you to go out to your ward and ask whether or not those issues are of interest to residents that may or may not consider voting for you at the next election. I doubt you'll be here at the next election if you take those positions. Now, on the premise of whether it's 4 or 5 or currently sticking with the 3, 80% of councils, if we take the research of Councillor Sikowski, clearly have determined that 3 is appropriate. This is an attempt at politics beyond belief. When I was elected, when I come into this place, I just get continuously disappointed by the people around this table that continue to play political games and not focus on the issues that people rightly care about. Unvaccinated councillors, councillors that are held to account for their behaviour, and indeed making sure that we have a vaccination hub. Not engage in Putin-style anti-democratic laws, which is proposed here. I'm sure he'd be very proud of this proposed proposition. Now, finally, the other point that I think is so important to be made here is that the advice from Maddocks does clearly state that this would be an attempt to silence councillors from being able to engage in their elective roles. This would be a vote against council advice. This would be a vote against legal advice. And in my opinion, this would be a vote against the CEO, because clearly this is a position that is taken by council. And the last time that this council voted against a CEO, they left prematurely. And I don't blame them for leaving. Let's not make the same mistake again here this evening by engaging in tweaks to governance rules that no one in the public really care about, but have every expectation that this place is governable. Because if it isn't, then a municipal monitor is most appropriate, because you cannot trust the decision-making around this table if this is all people care about. So some people need to think about their actions, the unintended consequences of changes like this, and really why they are actually undertaking this change, given that quite frankly, it is clearly designed to be provocative, has no real material objective other than to silence other councillors around the table. And if you vote for that, which at least 5 councillors will, and I could name them, guaranteed, then clearly it does show that block voting, changing these types of things...
Councillor Gilligan, I'm increasingly being tired of you alleging of block voting. There's no such thing as block voting. If you have a look at the votes that have been held in this chamber, I think there's been 3, 5, 7, you know, so I'm really getting tired of it, as I am with you alleging for municipal monitor. If you have basis of calling a municipal monitor, I absolutely ask you to submit something to them.
Well, with respect, Mr Mayor, your job is to govern the meeting, not
Absolutely
to
it
express
is.
an opinion.
And it's also to make comment on things that I think that are unreasonable in the chamber. Thank you very much.
You certainly did make some abusive comments to me on Sunday.
Councillor Gilligan, if you please refrain from talking outside the motion and stick to what you're actually talking to. Thank you very much. Well, because as we know, there's 2 sides to a story, so please contain yourself to what you're talking about.
Well, with respect, Mr Mayor, I'm clearly talking...
Well, if I don't take the disrespect, and if you give me another one, you'll be out of the chamber.
So am I allowed to talk?
You are.
Okay, thank you for the privilege. So in finality to this, this would be the ongoing path clearly around just changing and tweaking things in order to satisfy a block of councillors. And I encourage and implore councillors to not do this, particularly those that are independent, merit-based minded when it comes to these decisions, and to oppose the proposition that's in this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilligan. Councillors, any speakers for this motion, amended motion? Councillor Mahfood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I wasn't going to say anything, but I too am sick and tired of hearing this from Councillor Gilligan. This block voting. If there was such a thing as block voting, if there was such a thing as a block of 6, Councillor Sikowski would have put up 6. He's quite simply put up for 4. And I think this is a responsible... This is a response. I'm talking about this 4. I'm talking exactly to the motion. I'm speaking the motion. I can't get that
Mr. Councillor, look, just give me a moment, please. I'll get to it if you don't interrupt me. Councillor Mahfood, can you stick to what the motion is, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. What's been put before us is a raising this one particular point in the governance rules is raising the number of signatures to 4. I fully support that. I think it is responsible. Councillor Sikowski's put a lot of work into it, and looking at the percentages, it is reasonable. If we had this is the same number as Councillor Sikowski has stated when we had 7 councillors. Same number when it went up to 9 councillors. We're now at 11 councillors. I think it's a responsible amount. We could have gone for 50% plus 1, could have gone for 6, but this is, I think, a responsible number, so I'm supporting this motion, this amendment. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mafood. Councillors, any further speakers against the motion? Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it is important to flag that we did get legal advice on this matter, and actually one of the comments actually was, while this is ultimately a matter for council, we caution against setting the ratio too high, as this may have unintended consequences and may expose council to criticism if it is seen as being directed at locking certain councillors out of the process. And I think it's very clear, considering the 3 councillors that have continued or who have called the 3 meetings, that this is clearly directed at Councillor Gilligan, Councillor Shaw and Councillor Marcus. So I'm happy to take, I suppose, the criticism at that, but certainly calling a special council meeting is not about urgent business. It is about a councillor or 3 councillors having the opportunity to bring issues to the table that are in the public interest. And I think Councillor Gilligan highlighted what those 3 were. And I think Maddox gave very clear advice on that. So I thank them for it. And I thank our governance officer who took the time to get the advice on the 23 pages of changes that were submitted by some of the councillors around this table, which is highly concerning to me. Anyway, I thank Councillor Sikowski for the research that he did in relation to this. I know he's put a lot of time and effort into it, but it's an Excel spreadsheet and you can cut the data any way, or you could actually cut it a number of ways. I can cut it to support me, not supporting the amendment, just as Councillor Sikowski has cut the data to support the reasoning for him to actually support changing from 3 to 4. There's a number of ways to do that, and yes, we might be, I don't know, I sort of was trying to work it out, but ultimately in the end, the only benchmark I'm interested in is the benchmark with the councils that have 11 councillors around the table. I'm actually not worried about councillors, or councils that have 9 or 4 or 7 or 3 or whatever that is. It's for the 10 councils that have 11 councillors that sit around the table, and they are Burundara, Greater Geelong, Hume, Kingston, Melbourne City, Mornington Peninsula, obviously Brimback, Monash, so a number of important and large metropolitan councils, just so that you're aware that only out of 8 of those councils, they all have the same current number of councillors that need to be a signatory to a special council meeting. That's 3. So it's actually 8, which would be the majority of councils that only have 3 as the majority. So personally, I do think this is a move to make it more difficult for councillors to call a special council meeting. And unfortunately, sometimes we sit around this table and need to discuss and debate certain items that might make people uncomfortable, or they might not like, or they don't want to talk about, but that's the nature of what we do here. That's why you put your name on a ballot paper, and that's why you sit around this table to debate items that are difficult, that might be uncomfortable, that you might not like, and if you can't debate them, don't sit around this table. I won't be supporting the amendment tonight. It is a clear change to lock councillors out, which is what the legal advice said. And I think it's time we focused on bigger issues in this community, other than whether you need 3 or 4 signatories for a special council meeting. And I have no doubt thousands of our residents would agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillors, any further speakers for this motion?
Mr Mayor, before I speak, can I please get some clarification on the purpose of a special meeting being called? Is actually intended for urgent business, please.
The
Actual governance.
Word I use.
I
didn't say urgent
well,
business.
hang on a second. We've had a question asked, so we'll answer the question.
So through you, Mr Mayor, so I'll just find the appropriate part of the governance rules.
Jenny's beat
Jenny's
you.
got it. Okay, so it is section 11 of the governance rules, and it says meetings not fixed by council, and this is the current set of governance rules that are proposed to be amended with this alternate motion tonight, that the mayor or at least 3 councils may, by a written notice to the CEO, call a council meeting. The notice must specify the date and time of the council meeting and the business to be transactioned. The chief executive officer must convene the council meeting as specified in the notice. Unless all councillors are present and unanimously agree to deal with any other matter, only the business specified in the written notice can be transacted at the council meeting. So it's not specific on whether it has to be urgent business, it's any items that are specified in the notice.
Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Thank you. So Councillor Hill.
Thank you. Well, it's not specific, but it's not written down. Obviously, when you call a special meeting, it has to be quite an urgent business that you can't wait until the ordinary council meeting, in my opinion. So, yep, I would like to speak.
Well, if we can just let Councillor Hill finish. We've all had our say, so let's let her have
Can
hers.
I speak on for the motion, please? Can I speak to the amendment, please?
You can, and you've got 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. In response to Councillor Shaw, 4 out of 11, it's 36%. It's about 1/3. It's not very high. So I would like to commend Councillor.
If we can just keep to the data without specific councillors.
That's my introduction. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to commend Councillor Zakowski for putting forward this amendment. From Councillor Zakowski's research, the vast majority of councils in Victoria has 1/3 or more of councillors to call a special meeting. We can't just pick the small minorities with a sample size of 10 and then say that's all 11. It's most likely that those councils have grown in numbers but have not updated their numbers yet. In my opinion, the numbers should be proportional to the total numbers of councillors. There is one example here with the biggest council in Australia. I know it's not in Victoria, but it's actually in Brisbane. We have this very similar.
Mayor,
excuse
point
me.
of
Continue,
order.
Councillor Hill.
Thank
Speaking
you.
to the motion.
Brisbane City Council has
Brisbane City Council has nothing to do with
27
Victoria.
councillors, and they
Councillor
require.
Shaw and Councillor Gilligan, if you could just.
This is just
I
unacceptable.
don't think it's funny.
Yep.
Whether a councillor speaking is incorrect or not, I think at least we give them the courtesy of listening to what they've got to say, unless it's absolutely illegal. So you had that, so let Councillor Hill do that.
One of the examples is that the biggest council in Australia, which is Brisbane City Council, has 27 councillors, and they require 1/3 of council to call a special meeting. In fact, not just I'm supportive of this amendment, I'm actually thinking about moving another amendment, depending on whether this is actually carried or not, to have at least 1/3 of the council to call a special meeting. For example, 1/3 of 11 is 3.7 councillors, which means it should be at least 4 councillors. The main reason is that an absolute number will be obsolete in due time, but a percentage or a fraction will be able to ensure this figure is future-proof, so that the numbers doesn't just have to keep changing in future when the numbers of councillors grow. Like our own council started from 7, grow to 9, grow to 11. So I'll be very supportive of this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillors, any further speakers against the motion? Councillor Marcus. Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to say very much. All I'm going to say, councillors, I've been here in this chamber 16 years, sitting in the seat of Councillor Teddy Dowling. He, Frank Purcell, would never, ever behave in this manner. I am getting phone call after phone call. They are sick and tired of the whole lot of us. How do you think our council officers feel? It is time to stop, both sides, because we are targeted. So I'm not going to say any more. Councillors, we need to come together because we have a fabulous new CEO, fabulous new officers, and they need to get this work done. We are a very fast-growing council. I'm not interested in any of this. All I'm interested in is representing my residents in the Iramu ward. And yes, I get phone calls from every other ward because they know I'm an old dinosaur, and I know that's the way you treat me, and I don't care. I am for our residents. And I don't want to put up with any of this nonsense going into the future. I think that what's been presented, thank you, Robert, for looking. I've even seen where I'm going to head to next, the Pyrenees Council. They don't behave like this. And the other thing is, so from in future, if this happens again, I will not even attend another council meeting when you're behaving in this manner. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor
CEO.
Marcus. Councillors, any further speakers for it? Against? Councillor Barrera.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I just want to say that I think the process we went through was a good one. I was one of those people who contributed considerably or significantly to the 23 pages. I think it was a good opportunity to be able to test the governance rules. When some of us who are new started in 2020, we kind of inherited those governance rules, and it's only with time that you actually get the experience of seeing how they work for you when you're in meetings. So I appreciate the opportunity from the governance team and council officers to be able to have that time to go through the governance rules as we did. I think it was a good exercise. For me personally, it was a good exercise and I learned a lot from it. I had several that from the legal advice were thought to be a good idea, others that were a matter for council, others that the legal advice was clear. I looked at lots of other council governance rules in formulating some of the suggestions that I put forward. Ultimately, if the legal advice wasn't there, I withdrew them. And I think on this one, I'm satisfied that Maddox have indicated that there could be issues if we change the number. Most councils have adopted that number 3. It's almost like a model rules that most councils seem to be using for their governance rules. I thank Councillor Zatkowski for going through the process and for itemising things as he has, but I think we did a lot of talking about this, a lot of back and forward. We had several opportunities to, through email and through talking to people, and I think we leave it as it is. So I won't be supporting this recommendation tonight, and I just thank the council officers for giving us the opportunity to explore the governance rules and discuss them as we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrera. Councillors, any further speakers for it, the motion? Any further speakers against? Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think going last, I don't want to go over too much what people have already said. I agree with Councillor Barrera. I don't think it's concerning that we had a lot of feedback. I think that was actually a really robust process, and I think that was important to go through that. I think it's also important to note that Maddox's comment was to caution against setting the ratio too high, as opposed to saying, 4 or something else was not a good number. However, to me, what we need to do is we need to compare like with like. And I thank as well Councillor Zatkowski for his work on here. And when you're looking at the number of councils, what I'm looking at is what's like with like. So what is a similar council of 11 councillors doing? How many do they need, as opposed to, we have such a wide breadth of councils and they have from a small number upwards. So I'm really looking at saying what's like with like and what are they doing? And the vast majority have 3. So although they do caution the advice of going too high, I do think it's important that we need to focus on those bigger issues. We need to go against from being very personal against people in this chamber and get ahead and do actually what our electorate voted us for. And I'm happy to therefore to vote against this amendment and keep it at 3. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McIntyre. Councillors, any further speakers for the motion? No further against. I think everyone's pretty much done. Councillor Zatkowski.
No right of reply, it's an amendment.
No, so we're not debating an amendment, this is a motion.
You can't, that is not procedurally correct. He's only putting an amendment.
Correct. So right of reply. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That is ridiculous.
We're not debating.
Well, Councillor Gillian, I've conferred with governance and governance has agreed. So can't do much more than that.
So I'm going to keep my comments very brief, and I thank the councillors for taking part in debate. Councillor Shaw, I absolutely agree. It's great having debate, and I welcome all the comments that have been made here tonight. I did go through the process very diligently. I haven't made a rash decision. Really, and I guess really what the substantive arguments are here tonight is whether the view is, and I truly actually tried to find out what the reasoning for 3 was in all these councils, and I actually really couldn't get to the bottom of why it was set at 3, and I suspect it's just a historical anomaly from an era and a time when there weren't as many councillors on councils. If you take the number 3, then certainly you would say that 80% of councils, as Councillor Gilligan pointed out, have the number 3 in them. But then if you look at it proportionally, it gets to 68% when you look at a ratio of councillors. So it's my view that the ratio is the important figure, which brings us to 4. And I guess I can't argue that if councillors in the room believe that it's actually the nominal number that's important, they'll vote that way, and I accept that. So I think the point that was made around the advice from the lawyers, I think their caution solely was around not making it a majority, because that would certainly be a bad look, and I completely agree. Increasing it by 1 doesn't even come close to making it a majority. That would be too short. What 4 actually is, and I've tried to look at this from many different angles, in terms of the percentages and ratios, and we're talking about numbers here, is that 4 would be a majority in a quorum meeting. So that would be enough for people to call the meeting. If 6 people showed up, the meeting would be valid, and they could actually achieve what they wanted to achieve with 4 people. So I think ultimately for these meetings to be called, there has to be a possibility of success, and with 3, there probably isn't. So I think that even if this isn't passed tonight, it would be probably meritorious for the people who are calling these special meetings to ensure that at least 4 people in the chamber were supportive of what they were bringing to the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Zatkowski. Councillors, I put it to the vote. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It is lost. Can somebody move the substantive, please?
Division.
All those who voted for? Councillor Zatkowski, Councillor Maynard, Ramesh, Hill and Mahfood. Against? Councillor Barrera, Hegeditch, Marcus, Shaw, Gilligan and McIntyre. Would a councillor like to move the substantive motion that we had prior? Councillor Shaw.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to ask for a second. It's been a long night. Thank you, Councillor Hegeditch. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to say that I do agree with Councillor Barrera that it was a very extensive process, and I think council officers did a great job in collating all that feedback and seeking the legal advice that was sought, and I do want to thank council officers for doing that. So obviously I'll be supporting the recommendation tonight. Thank you.
And that's to go for public comment as well. The governance rules go for public comment.
Yes, of course they do. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Ramesh. No, hang on. Sorry. Hegeditch. Beg your pardon. I've got my lines mixed up.
No worries. Thank you for that very detailed debate, councillors. I have been sitting on the fence whether to support the motion or the amendment that Councillor Zatkowski had put up or not. And in all my time on council, and I think it's, 9 years or so, I've never spoken on the governance rules. They really have been a tick and flick episode. So it was very interesting tonight to engage in debate. And normally the governance rules are a document that sits in the top drawer of our chambers. So as the governance, so the draft before us tonight, as has been mentioned, has been a result of feedback that has been provided by all councillors, and also the input from Maddox as our lawyers. So on the reflection and the advice that we've received, I agree that these rules cannot be so prescriptive that they do not provide any flexibility, nor can they be too flexible that we open the door to too much interpretation. So I think the draft is a good reflection of the feedback and the advice that this council has received, and provides a good balance between good governance and our councillor expectations. So I'm supporting the draft rules going out for public consultation tonight, and look forward to the feedback that will be received before it is put to council for adoption.
Thank you, Councillor Hegarty.
Thank you.
Councillor, is there any speakers against the substantive motion? Any speakers for it? Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to repeat what's already been said, so I just wanted to highlight one of the key things and the importance of that sort of review and having that robust process. So one of the amendments has been to do with petitions. The fact that often the rules were that in the past we had to have the next meeting, had the reply to a petition, which was not appropriate sometimes depending on how complicated the issue was that was raised in the petition. And this allows a subsequent council meeting, which I think is very important, and it also allows us to consider the matter in a robust way and in a proper way, and actually before you give that appropriate response. So I just wanted to highlight that this is sort of one of the amendments that is proposed that's going out for consultation, and worth highlighting obviously to residents, because we have a lot of residents that do raise petitions. So we just wanted to raise that. Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you,
Mayor.
Councillor McIntyre. Councillors, any speakers against? Any further speakers for? No further speakers. I put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Thank you for some very robust debate, councillors. 6.5.7, Council Vaccinations Report, pages 220 to 225, Recommendation 221. Attachment pages 226 to 241. The recommendation is Council notes this report. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Ramesh. Seconder. Councillor Hill. Discussion, Councillor Ramesh.
Nothing to say.
No.
Thank you.
Councillor Hill. Any speakers against? Any speakers for? There being none, I put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. 6.5.9, Portfolio Committee Reports or minutes. Reports, pages 246 to 2.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I think we missed 6.5.8.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Yes, I was just seeing if you were watching what I was doing. Sorry, councillors. Item 6.5.8, response to the motion, Wyndham Flower Festival. The report is page 242 to 240.
With our council officers, we decided it would probably be better that we organised a committee outside of council. It would give that committee a lot more scope to be able to get a lot more funding to run it. And so I've agreed that it would be a better way to go. And so there's been some wonderful people apply for our portfolio who are very experienced in event coordinating, so I don't think we'll have any trouble getting a committee that will come together to bring a new festival to this city. I look forward to working with the community members on it. I will certainly go forward. I think I'm recognised as a fairly competent event coordinator. I did Wirrama for 26 years. We had 50,000 people coming to that. I still go away and I do workshops on how to be a good coordinator. And so I look forward to being able to form a committee, and hopefully this festival will take place in March next year. And I hope that all the councillors will support as we move forward with a new event for this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Councillor Hegarty, do you wish to speak? No. Any speak? Okay. Pardon? No, I was about to say any against. Any for? Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. I'll be supporting the recommendation, and Councillor Marcus, I wish you all the best in organising the first Wyndham Flower Festival.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillors, any speakers against? Any further speakers for? There be none, I put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Now to 6.5.9. Portfolio Committee reports. Reports page 246, 247. Recommendation page 247. Attachments 248 to 265. Councillors, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Ramesh, seconder. Councillor Hill. Councillor Ramesh.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hill.
No, thank you.
Being a portfolio reports, I won't ask for speakers against. Any councillors wish to speak on their portfolios? Councillor Marcus?
Yes, I've moved. This is a new portfolio for the city, Destination Wyndham, and I've enjoyed my time with, first of all, it was Fiona Handu, and now it's Emily Keogh and Susan Scott, and we're working very closely with Western Melbourne Tourism, and we will move forward to make sure that we can bring more tourism to this city to help our economy, but also to make sure that we work in with the Werribee South market gardeners. So it will take in all of Wyndham, not just Werribee South, but Werribee South is where we've got all of our major attractions. But I'm really happy that I'm a bit sad that I'm still not on the environment, but you can't have two. So I'm moving forward now, and I look forward to being able to produce something fantastic for this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Any councillors wish to speak on their portfolios? Councillor Zatkowski.
Yeah, look, I just want to say very quickly, I spent a full day with Peter McKinnon, going through an interview process for members of my portfolio. We had an amazing amount of applicants who are very, very competent in their expertise and experiences in environmental matters. And I'm actually genuinely looking forward to, I shouldn't say actually, of course I'm looking forward to having this committee meet for the first time, and looking forward to the opportunity to announce the successful candidates.
Thank you, Councillor Zatkowski. Councillor Mahfood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just say a few words because I'm proud of the work that's been undertaken in the Creative City portfolio, in which I'm the chair of that, and just some of the summer program events. I think some of these councillors have been to some of the events. I urge all councillors to get out this Friday to some of the events. Another Meet Me in Tarneet event, also Lit, which will be going from 10 days starting this Friday at Wyndham Park, which is basically a light show, light extravaganza. This I cannot commend enough the work of the staff in the Creative City portfolio. Working closely with Craig Toussaint and Ludo, or outgoing director Ludo, who's put a lot of work into it. There's a mention here, and I'll probably get a phone call or a couple of phone calls tomorrow, so I thought I'd just quickly touch on, there's a mention of the Discovery Centre inside the minutes, and that's something that I've had a few people contact me from time to time. There's actually a little advocacy group that have been set up to try and, ask council, what we're doing with that centre. There's been a lot of discussion around that. There's mentioned in these minutes that we were going to have a workshop, and I'd just like to mention that we have had that workshop, that all the councillors attended either the walkthrough or the workshop. That's all 11 councillors attended either the workshop or the walkthrough. So it's something that is at the forefront and just, forefront of our thinking, and something that will be more coming out in the near future. But just I'd like to touch on that because it is mentioned there that has happened. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mahfood. Any further councillors wanting to speak? There being none, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. 6.5.10, informal meeting of councillors, reports on page 266 to 267, recommendations on page 266, attachments 266 to 69. Councillor, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Ramesh. Second, Councillor Zatkowski. Discussion, Councillor Ramesh?
No, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
No. Any councillors for or against? There being none, put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. There are nil notices of motion for item 7. Item 8, Council Seal. 8.1 is awarding of contract N400262 greening the pipeline landscape construction panel. Reports, page 269 to 274, recommendations on page 270. Nil attachments. Councillors, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Shaw, second to Councillor Hegadich. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Only to say that this is a great initiative and I continue to support it, and it's great to see the work continues. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hegadich.
I concur with Councillor Shaw.
Any speakers against? Any speakers for? Councillor Marcus.
Thank you. This started in my term last time, and when I read through it again today, I thought it's fantastic to see the amount of more open spaces that we will have here in the city for our
27
residents.
kilometres.
Sorry?
27 kilometres.
Yes, and I think that's really fabulous. What I would say, though, is I do hope that we have some say on the plantings that will go into this greening the pipeline. No gum trees. I come from the country and we had gum trees all over our farm, and that's where they should belong, not in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Councillors, any speakers against? Speakers for? Being no more, I put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 9 is questions with notice from the public gallery. Mr CEO, do we have any questions?
No questions this evening, Mr Mayor.
No questions. Okay. Item 10 is urgent business. There is nil. Item 11 is confidential business. Councillors will be now required to close the meeting to consider confidential business. So can I have Councillor Zatkowski?
Mr Mayor, I move that pursuant to Section 66(1) and 2A of the Local Government Act 2020, this meeting of council be closed to members of the public in order for council to discuss.
Seconder, please. Councillor McIntyre. Councillors, discussion, nil. All those in favour? Against? Motion's carried. Thank you.
public.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor McIntyre. Councillor, put the motion to vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion's carried. We can now open the meeting and open the door. Thumbs up. Okay, so before I close the meeting, I'd just like to mention that it was last meeting with council. So I wish Jenny all the best, and don't let the door hit you on the way out. No, seriously, all the best in your future endeavours, and thank you for your service. All right, and so item 12 is close the meeting. So I declare the meeting closed at 9:01. Thank you, councillors. You're welcome.